A lot of real estate investors dream of owning dozens of properties, hundreds of properties, but they don't really know what it takes to go from owning one property to hundreds of properties. And today we're going to break down part of Ian's portfolio. When I say part of his portfolio, is just the residential component of his portfolio. He owns other projects, commercial, self storage, things like that, private notes. But we're just going to talk about the residential component. We felt like that'll be something that is very achievable for everybody to understand. And I'm going to jump in as well and talk about how our rental portfolio was set up before we sold it. But let's start with Unit One. Unit One. When did you buy that property, Ian? And how much did you pay for it? How'd you finance it?
Yep. So we bought Unit 1 in East Baltimore in 2012 going into 2013. So I'm coming up, I guess, on my 10-year anniversary. And basically we paid $25,000. I went to an event. Someone said, I'll bring you a deal. I didn't know any better. And I said, okay. So we paid $25,000 to buy our first rental property, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath over in East Baltimore in a section called the 4x4. And we renovated it. I did probably not anything right, but we did it and probably put somewhere in, I think, $25,000 to $30,000. I still don't know to this day because we don't have systems. I didn't have systems and processes in place like we do today. But we were able to achieve $1,250 rent. And that was huge for us. We were all in for roughly $60K. And we were able to get $1,250 rent from a subsidized tenant in a very short period of time.
And that's in essence the formula. You probably thought you hit the jackpot when that came in. Hey, I got only a few $100s. I can go, pay my utility bill. I can go pay my car payment. I can do this. I need to go buy another property. Then I can go get a better car, and I can do all these things. So that I'm guessing. The first year, you did 5 properties, and then the next year, 2014, you did another 5. Like, walk us through a little bit about, that was deal 1. Like, what happened in deal 2 and deal 3 and deal 4, deal 5? Did things change?
Yeah, so from deal 1 to deal 2, I was able to find a property right in that same 4x4 section, paid $5,000 less, but this time I got contractors to help me out. So I paid a little bit more money. And now that I knew I was able to refinance my properties and I was able to operate, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then, so I bought the first 2 properties. Then I found a hard money lender who was buying stuff at tax sale. He had a bunch of shadow inventory. So I wound up buying the next 4 properties off of him. Actually, maybe even the next 6 from him because it was very easy. And as I started to go through this process, it was like, all right, well, I can use myself or I can utilize my capital to make these projects go faster. And I started to get a little bit of velocity. And I knew if I got to 10 properties, I'd have the cash flow that I wanted. I could offset working overtime. My wife didn't have to work at that point. But more importantly, I knew that was the max I was able to refinance in my personal name. I had no clue what it looked like to go to a bank and ask for money or any of those things. I knew if I could just get to 10 properties, I would do it. And, they were all in the new stages. I was just building them out. So there wasn't a lot of problems. They were newer tenants. Everything was brand new. There wasn't a ton of service calls. So I didn't have a lot of challenges operating those 10 properties in my first 2 years of ownership.
So you didn't really talk about the goal of quitting your job or replacing your income or any of those things. Like, were you just what were you doing with the money? Were you taking the money and trying to grow?
Yeah, at that point, it was just sinking the cash back into the quote unquote company, if you will. And honestly, just making sure that, so if that's 2013, I'd be 30. So my wife must have been up my butt about having kids, and I had no clue how to pay for it. I had no clue how to let my wife stay at home and not work and take care of our kids because that's what she really, really wanted to do. And that was just top of mind for me. I just need to make this extra cash to replace her income so she doesn't have to work. That's all I cared about at that point.
Got it. So let's say you hit that. You said you hit that after 10 years?
Oh yeah. We hit that way before 10 years. Yes.
Okay. So or not 10 years, 10 properties.
Oh yeah. 10 properties for sure. I mean, she still continued to work. We didn't have kids for another 2 years. But, in the same sense, it was just a good backstop to know that they were there operating and that we were good at something. We were able to prove the concept of building this rental portfolio.
What was the biggest challenge that you had um, from deal 1 through deal 10?
Capital, 100% capital. Sure, back end organizing books. If I looked at it from today, what would I say versus in real time? In real time, it was always capital. How am I going to refinance these? How am I going to get more cash to do the next deal? What overtime can I work? What side jobs can I work? What houses can we wholesale? How can we continue to monetize to put more cash into these to grow the rental portfolio that we wanted, and could continue to grow that at a sustainable pace?
How busy were you when you got to 10 properties? Like, were you like, hey, I want to do more, but like, I just don't have the bandwidth to do it?
It's hard to say because we were infatuated with what we were doing. I wanted to learn it. I breathed it, ate it. Every waking second I spent learning about real estate, going to meetups, going to events, talking to other real estate investors, going to auctions, you name it, I was doing it. So the workload of operating the properties were not that much. However, my infatuation with real estate was really high. So you could say I was working all the time.
So what was your next kind of like, let's call it season? We hear the term Alex Hermosi will say you have different seasons inside your business. And like, I would guess that's probably season 1, like 1 to 10 in that particular area. Like, what was the next step?
Yeah, the next season for us was massive growth. So, I did those first 10 properties on my own. My business partner was wholesaling, and we ultimately joined forces. And we started flipping houses to generate a ton of capital. There was a ton of shadow inventory. We needed big swaths of cash to be able to invest into rental real estate. So basically, from 2014 to 2019 was nothing but massive growth. It was the summer of 18, early 19. Nothing but massive growth inside the single family real estate place. We did everything from wholesaling to flipping houses to building rental portfolios for ourselves. And every time it was just rinse and repeat. Single family house, we do it, we go. Single family house, we do it, we go. And sure, there was capital constraints the same way we built the original 10, but they were just different scales of problems. We were able to go out and find capital now. We were bankable. Our number one goal was always to be bankable and having the conversations with the banks, getting us over those humps. That was the next phase for us, or the next season for us, was the massive growth and really learning the next part of the ropes that has allowed us to advance to the portfolio we have today.
What did your average day look like in 2000? Like, let's call it like 18, 19, right when you're in like the full trenches of like, I got a full time I'm a full time real estate investor, and I have a lot of properties and a lot of responsibilities, and a lot. And my capital investors and banks have put a lot of faith in me.
Yeah, 17, 18 was like the height of like, we have everything going on. We hired our first employee. We had tons of subcontractors. We had 15 houses on the books at any given time. Number one thing to do was go out, check up on all the job sites. Once we hired Ryan, our operations manager today, he relieved a ton of pressure off of us. So everything we neglected, taxes, bookkeeping, at a high level, negotiating better contracts with vendors, sourcing better deals, sourcing capital investors. It allowed us to have him concentrate on the properties, and then allowed us to go concentrate on the business that was, I won't say neglected, but did not get the time that it needed because we were in growth mode. We were nurturing our portfolio to get it to this point that allowed us to pay someone to then allow us to step back and say, what's the next iteration? What can we work on next? What can we fix? Leasing processes, um, service calls, hiring maintenance guys, putting technology in place to help us manage the portfolio. There was a ton of stuff that happened when we hit that scale. And, at that point, we had roughly about 100 single family houses on the books that we were renting out as a rental portfolio.
One thing we always talk about is upgrading uh, assets and properties. And in essence, like, you start at the beginning with the asset that you're most comfortable with, the asset that you have the capital to invest in, the asset that you can wrap your brain around. but that typically always increases over time, right? You trade a trash asset to a better asset, to a better asset, to a better asset. Were you buying the similar properties as you purchased in 2013, or were you continuing to buy better and better? And that might not necessarily nicer properties. That's not the right term. Better assets.
Yeah, we went from, I mean, if I took you to the 4x4 today, most of you probably wouldn't be able to survive. It was a rougher part of the city. The heart of East Baltimore, if you watch The Wire, it was, reference to the Clifton Park golf course, right? And then we slowly graduated to the outer edges of the city. Then we graduated to the county. Then we graduated to a 7-unit apartment building. Then we graduated to a 34-unit apartment building, then a 76-unit apartment building, and then another 10 on top of our 34. And boom, there it is. Next thing you know, we got almost 300 residential units. And we're like, wow, how did that happen? It happened in a blink of an eye. The last 150 units, 200 units, took a third of the time to aggregate than it did the first 2/3 of the, or yeah, I'm sorry, did I say that right? The last 2/3 took shorter to aggregate than the first third because we had all the system and process in place to go out and execute at a high level. We had the banks, we had the capital investors, we had the employees, we had the technology, we had the systems in place to allow us to go out, buy these assets, and continue to grow our portfolio at a very nice pace.
And I feel that that's always the case, right? When you go from property 1 to 2, that's 2x, twice as much time, effort, resources, everything. But in essence, like if you have 100 properties and you want to go to 200 properties, that's 2x as well. But there's that much more leverage. And that's why, the hockey stick approach and the snowball growth, it just, is magical on this. Two final questions that I think a lot of real estate investors would be interested. Number one, what's an average day look like? And number two, if you started over, what would be one tip or trick that you would recommend?
Yeah, the average day looks like the same as it has over the past few years. I come in every day. First part of my morning is in growth, looking, the highest level tasks that I want to do, looking for new deals, fixing any high level problems that I want to fix before anybody else gets into the office or the day gets going. After that, it's just kind of damage control, looking at new stuff, building new content, doing what we want to do. So that's what our day looks like today. We have a pretty big team in place. Upgrading these assets over that time has allowed us to grow to that level. If I could go back and tell myself what would I do different on day one, is the capital is out there for good deals. And I probably would have bought a little bit better quality asset day one. I just didn't have the cash to do it. I would have bought the first few assets that I did. And instead of continuing to do what I knew, I would have challenged myself at an earlier date and challenged myself to get into better quality assets, not only from single family standpoint, but from the commercial asset standpoint, and really push our careers along. But hey, you can't change it. We can only do what we do today and continue to grow.
And it's easy to state that in hindsight. At the beginning, you don't know better, right? Everybody learns from mistakes. Everybody learns from experience. That's why the most successful people have the most experience and they have the most success because they've seen it. And it's you can tell somebody 100 times, 100 ways to go in this direction, and they may not, especially stubborn entrepreneurs and stubborn investors. So I certainly can understand that. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this content and any of the other type of content that we're doing, please spread the word. Please smash that like button. Please smash that subscribe button. It would mean the world to us. And we'll see you guys in the next video.